last intro and outro that I'm going to film in front of this background. Hello crafters, welcome back to another video with Amy Makes That, where I post weekly videos on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok about the Cricut and craft projects like today's video. So if you love this kind of content, please subscribe to my channel because I so greatly appreciate having lots of crafty Cricut friends. Today's video is an exciting tutorial and it is on how to make cornhole boards with your Cricut. I will say that this definitely is a more intermediate expert Cricut project. You will have to have a lot of patience and time with these boards just because there's a lot of steps to go into it, but I promise you they are well worth the time and work because they came out so beautiful. And as always, all the products will be linked in the video description, so you can check them out and see which products I exactly used. So let's stop talking and get into today's tutorial. So the cornhole boards have arrived. Here they are. Okay, so here's my setup. I have some lovely garbage bags to help protect my floor. Today we are staining, taping, and painting. I will be staining the top of this board in my favorite stain, and then the sides here are going to be white. So the legs are going to be white as well as the side of the board. And I'm also going to be cutting off about 1.5 inches right here because I'm going to make a white border around the entire cornhole board. Now I'm running to the store really quick and I'm going to Michael's, Lowe's, and Dollar Tree. When I tell you I'm always in here, they know me here. Okay, but when did the Dollar Tree get so cute? I have my frog tape. This is necessary. I swear by frog tape. Here I have primer. This is just Kiehl's multi-service primer. And then I have these paint brushes. These are going to be to paint the primer and paint. I found my stain. It's early American. All right, so I'm gonna set up the tripod now. You see my bridal shower sign? This is my wedding corner. She's really nice, don't mind her. And you're actually watching this, it's the end of May, because just for privacy reasons, it has the date and our last name and whatnot on it. Just want to avoid any wedding crashers over here. I'm going to set up the tripod and stain with these sponge brushes. So let me explain how I'm staining the cornhole boards. I'm dipping my foam brush into the stain and then brushing it on the board. Then to make it a more seamless finish, I take a paper towel and blend it in. It really makes the stain not as dark and kind of just spreads out the stain more so you're not using as much. I've learned this process with staining things in my life. I think it really helps. And now the board is finally stained. I can move on to the next step, which is taping. I'm using frog tape to tape the boards and make the border. Now, a trick I use instead of using a ruler is I will tape along the side and edges of the cornhole board and line it up to make sure it is straight and even. I'm like really focusing on here. And then I will add another piece of tape next to it and then remove that first piece of tape so I know that it is a straight, even line. And I will repeat the same process for the rest of the board. So it's across this whole line. And now we're gonna put another string of tape here and then remove this one. So instead of measuring and using a ruler, all you have to do is just add 2 pieces of tape, remove this one, and you're good to go. Then I'm just using my Cricut scraper tool to ensure that the tape is really adhered into the board and I get crisp, clean lines when I'm painting. I do not want the paint to bleed and seep through at all. Next, I will take a box cutter and carefully cut the edges so that way I have the border. You can also use a ruler to ensure that the lines are super straight. Sometimes you can eyeball it, sometimes you can't, but you might feel more comfortable with a ruler. Now the next step is to tape and make the border for the cornhole hole. I went through some trial and error with this, so there probably definitely is an easier way, but this is how I figured it out and it worked great for me. What I did was I put some frog tape directly over the cornhole board hole and make sure that you leave some extra tape on the side and you will see why. And here I'm measuring 1.5 inches distance with my ruler around the entire hole of the cornhole board. Now you could have taken your razor blade if you feel confident enough to cut a circle around it, but I'm not that talented. So a way to bypass that is to go into Cricut Design Space and make a circle stencil. So I created a circle and made the size 8.5, and I'm using my removable vinyl with the setting on premium vinyl, so it's an easy cut. I'll apply the transfer tape to it, scrape it down, and then adhere it to the board. Now, off camera, I did draw a circle so I can see where the outline of the circle is going to go. This just helped me do it visually because it's kind of hard to see the outline when the backing of the vinyl is covering it. So now I know that it is directly in the middle of the cornhole board circle. Once I had my measurements, I carefully flipped up the vinyl and then removed the tape so that way I can apply the vinyl down onto the board. Then I removed the rest of the tape, carefully removed the backing, and then adhered the rest of the stencil to the board. I used my extra large scraper tool because this was a bigger project and it just worked better rather than using the smaller scraper tool. Now, since it is a circle, it might get a little bubbly and not even, so just be patient and carefully work your way around it. After scraping it a few times, it will be even, I promise. Then of course, if you know me, I am the worst painter on the entire planet, so I have to put tape around just to be extra careful because I do not want any white paint around the border. And now it's time to paint. Before I paint, I always do 2 steps. The first step is to apply some polyacrylic. You can also use Mod Podge if you have. I just had polyacrylic in the house because that's what I'm sealing the cornhole board with. So I did that for all of the areas that I'm painting, around the cornhole circle, around the border. And then I applied my primer. I had this really tiny brush. Please don't judge me. I did not have any other paintbrushes in the house. Didn't feel like going to the store. And then I also primed the inside of the board as well. I primed the border with a much bigger brush. I did not catch this on camera because my camera died, which I'm going to say in 3 seconds. Okay, so my camera died, but I primed the circle and the perimeter of the cornhole board. It looks so good. I did 2 coats of primer. I also primed the sides as well. So this is ready to get painted. The next step is to paint. I'm using basic acrylic white paint that I got from Michael's, and I'm going to apply 3 coats of this. I painted the top, the sides. This is one of the time-consuming parts. I put on a nice little podcast. You can listen to some music, watch a TV show, and it won't be as bad. There are many lies that Okay, so we've finished. I did 3 coats of paint, so now I'm going to remove the tape. Now I'm going to remove the tape, and this is, I think, my favorite part because I love seeing how everything came out. Let me know if you feel the same way in the comments because I don't know, I love seeing like the final product and removing that tape. Oh, look at how satisfying that is. And those lines, so crisp and clean. Ngorga. Okay, so I just took out the tape and it looks amazing. It is so crisp. None of the lines bled, which I am shocked at. So if you doubted me when I was using the frog tape, now you know frog tape is elite. Day 1 is complete, so I'm going to let the paint dry overnight now, and day 2 will involve me making the stencil and painting that onto the board and then sealing the board. But I will see you guys in day 2. You told me that my foolishness had consequences. Going to confession, desperate for redemption. Hello, it is day 2 and my friend is still here. The boards look beautiful. I am so happy how they turned out. You just saw I printed out the stencil and now I'm going to place it onto the boards. I kind of want it on the lower end. I'll show you. So I'm going to measure these out and then make sure that they're even on both sides and then tape them so they are ready to be painted. So I am measuring with my ruler to make sure that where I place the stencil is even on the board on all all the sides. And then once I know that it is even, I'm going to remove the backing and apply it to the wood board. I demonstrate the same process in my mirror video where I apply a piece of tape or leave extra room with my transfer tape, as you can see on the bottom stencil here. So it essentially saves my measurements and I don't have to redo that when I remove the vinyl backing. And don't forget to scrape the stencil with your scraper tool so it's adhered to the board. Then I'll carefully remove the transfer tape and repeat the same process for the top stencil. And it is ready to be painted. Again, we're doing the same exact process of applying the polyacrylic or Mod Podge if you have first. And I like to use the smaller brush for this part for both the primer and the polyacrylic because that will make the paint really goopy and thick, and you want to have thin coats each time. So here I'm applying my primer, and I did 2 coats of primer just to be safe.
We don't practice what I've heard my friends tell me to stop stressing. The life is a blessing. You only live once. Do what your heart wants. And I keep replaying all the memories.
Next up is to use the acrylic paint. We're going to be using a lot of this stuff, guys, so make sure you have a paper plate or something of some sort so you can put a little bit on a plate. I'll dab some of that on the sponge and then dab the rest on the paper plate so it's a thin layer and it's not too thick. Every layer needs to be thin because I mentioned before that if you do too thick of a layer, the paint will bleed, even if you do the Mod Podge. So 3 coats is the magic number. Make sure you're giving enough time in between each coat to dry as well. Okay, so this is finally done. I did about 3 coats dabbing onto here, and now I'm going to remove the tape and remove the inside of the letters. I am now ready to remove the tape and remove the stencil. Make sure you have your weeder tool ready at hand because we will be weeding all of those little areas that might not come up when I have the tape, or the inside of the 0 and the 8, all of those little tiny areas. Look at that cornhole board. Oh my god, I'm patting myself on the back right now. That looks so cool. Now we're going to let this dry overnight so everything is good to go for day 3 of us sealing the board. It is day 3, the last day of doing these cornhole boards with the Cricut. My friend is still here. So I did a little fun thing. I actually used the bucket. I put it underneath so that way the cornhole board is elevated. So now I don't have to have the polyacrylic dripping onto the garbage bag and then it gets completely stuck to there. So now we can start sealing. I'm using the polyacrylic that I showed beforehand and a really good paintbrush. So this is a very repetitive process, but as you can see, I'm dipping my paintbrush into the polyacrylic and I'm applying an even coat on the entire board, even the sides. Do not forget the sides. You will want to let it dry for at least 30 minutes and make sure that you are in a ventilated area. Put those fans on, open some windows. That will help speed up the process, especially if you are inside like me. I sealed this board with 8 coats. So I'm not sure if you can tell, but it's really streaky. And that's because some areas are drying, some areas are not drying. Here's dry, but here's still wet. So you want to let this sit for about maybe 30 minutes, come back, see if it's wet. And then if not, then start the next coat. And I did not film this as well, but I had a light grit sandpaper that I lightly just brushed over in between each coat when they were dry, so it was a nice smooth finish. This is the final product. I'm so happy I was able to share my process of making the cornhole boards with you all. Now let's close out this video. Thank you everyone so much for watching today's video on how to make cornhole boards with your Cricut. If you decide to make this craft project and make cornhole boards, please tag me on Instagram because I always love seeing your craft projects because of me. If you liked today's video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and click my subscribe button to see more craft project videos like today's. Thank you as always for watching and supporting my channel. Your love for crafting and support always mean the world to me, so thank you for that. I hope you're all having an amazing day and I will see you in the next video. Bye!
Since the first time